Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is NURUL binti SUHAIMI. My metric number is 1191799. We are from KAD2. We will present about the role of the faith among the national leader. The problem statement in our study is the Muslims are influenced by various ideologies in ruling the country and abandoned about the issue of Islamic creed, Sharia and morals. As the result, the country have to face many problems and government incapable solve the problem. Besides, Al-Farabi also saw that the nation's decline was a result of its leaders' moral decline. The research objective for our study: the first one is to identify the concept of Islamic leadership. Second, to analyze the problems among national leaders. And the third one, to examine the role of Aqidah among Islamic national leaders. So, as we know, the necessities of human life and nature is to live in society. They need a ruler, or we call the caliph, imam, or head of state to rule among themselves in a government or country. Islam, or the Sharia law, must become the creed and the tenet of the government. A leader can be categorized into two. The first is group, where the leader have to protect themselves from doing bad activities such as rashwa and performing the sharat tasks or duties. And in the second category is individual, where the leader should fully obey God and avoid his prohibitions so that he will be qudwah hasanah to the ummah. The concept of Islamic leadership can be referred to three aspects. Aspect of influence come first. In Islam, communities will begin to doubt the leadership of those who lack influence. For instance, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar ibn Khattab have a significant impact on how the middle-class Muslim community defines leadership. Secondly, the aspect of spirituality. In Islam, a leader serves as both a community and a religious leader. This is same with Prophet Muhammad SAW, who served as both a religious and a community leader. Characteristic is the third aspect. One of the factors considered while evaluating someone's potential as a leader is their distinguishing traits. The good and poor traits of the leader are included in this area. We can see the leadership of Prophet ﷺ when he focused on the development of a firm faith in the first generation of Muslims when he began preaching to His Majesty in Mecca. Next is definition of Islamic leadership. A leader is someone who the community looks to guide them. Leadership is described in the Quran using a variety of terminology such as caliph, imam, and ulil amri. According to the Quran, the decision of the leader is made by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not by humans. Rasulullah SAW leadership can be seen when once he was offered to stop calling people to faith in Allah in exchange for wealth, women, and a prominent position among their people. But Rasulullah SAW declined the offer in order to maintain his faith in Islam.
My name is NASUHA binti ALIAS with metric number 1191786. So now I would like to share about the characteristic of faithful leader according to Al-Mawardi. The leader has the highest position in the Islamic State. According to Al-Mawardi, the faithful leader must meet 7 conditions, but in this video I will explain 5 of the 7 conditions. The first one is justice. One of the specific characteristics of Islamic society is to uphold and create justice as the main goal. Justice is one of the most important conditions for leaders. Although the character of courage is necessary for a leader, but it is not enough to get benefits if a leader is tyrannical. So justice is a value and conditions that needs to be emphasized by every Muslim leader. Second, the leader must possess information and the capacity to decide wisely and independently. They need to have the knowledge to be able to do ijtihad in facing problems and laws. Knowledgeable leaders are prioritized because without sufficient knowledge about Islam, leadership will fail. Leadership in Islam aims to manage the administration of the state and society accordance with Islamic law. So, it is very necessary to choose a leader who is knowledgeable in managing the leadership. The third one is physical health. This feature is also important in the struggle and leadership of Islam, so that the leaders can deal directly with their responsibilities. It means that there is no deficiency in her body parts from preventing him from acting. For example, a leader should be free from all form of impairment, like having complete hands and feet, complete eyes, complete intellect, means that not crazy and so on. It's also important because if the leader loses or has deficiency in his body parts, it makes him unable to act. Then automatically the leader cannot carry out his duties properly. The next characteristic is healthy senses. Basically, an elected leader should have the completeness of his sensory functions, like being able to see, speak, hear, smell, taste, and others. If one of his senses doesn't work, then it will prevent him from holding a position as a qualitative leader. According to Muhammad in 1997, there are also fuqaha who particularize the defect to a weakness that affects the ability to think and work. The last one is the leader should be courage. The leader should be brave and need to have the character to defend their people. Not only that, the leaders need to be brave in fighting the enemies. And Al-Mawardi also mentioned that courage play an important role, so the ability to carry out jihad against the enemies of the state needs to be emphasized by every leader.
My name is Nur ATIQAH binti Muhammad SHUKRI. My metric number is 1191823. So now for the next subtopic, I will be present about the problems among national leaders. Firstly, there are many problems among the national leaders, but for this assignment, we have highlighted two main problems that is common, which is kleptocracy and tyrannical. For my part, I will present about kleptocracy. Firstly, what is kleptocracy? Kleptocracy is a term that is used for a government in a country that was led by a corrupt officials, known as kleptocrats. These kleptocrats use their position to exploit their own citizens and natural resources in order to boost their own personal gain, which means the kleptocrats use the citizens' money in the countries that they rule for their own personal gain. Most of the kleptocratic countries are corrupt and will most likely involve with acts of bribery and considered as a crime that occur in a country. To sum up this point, a leader plays an important role in every country. Using kleptocracy can give a very bad effects in all aspects, for example, in economy, including loss of government income, lack of efficiency, and of course, it will also affect the citizens' life in the country as well. Allah's word from the Holy Quran has clearly explained that corruption is forbidden. An act of taking property that is not one owns is not allowed. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wala ta'kulu amwalakum bainakum bil batili wa tudlu biha ilal hukami litakulu fariqan min amwalin nas bil ismi wa antum ta'lamun. Meaning, and do not consume one another's wealth unjustly or send it in bribery to the rulers in order that they might aid you to consume a portion of the wealth of the people in sin, while you know it is unlawful. Surah Al-Baqarah verses 188.
My name is UMAIRAH binti KHAIRIL. My metric number is 1191789. The next problem among national leaders is tyranny. In general, tyrannical leaders wield absolute power and authority, and always wield that power unjustly, cruelty, and oppressively. Tyranny in Arabic terms is zalim. Zalim means someone who does not put something in its right place. In political context, the leader who is zalim always abuses the power. For example, the leader takes people's money and let the people live in poverty. According to Rahman in 1998, a tyrannical leader is those who commit some sins. Because of that sins, the leader can be called zalim or fasik, such as abusing a Muslim without rights or ignoring stipulation of law based on Sharia. Ibn Khaldun also has introduced the concept of tyranny or injustice in his book Al-Muqaddimah, which means abuse of power, abuse of other people's property, using forced labor, denying the rights of others, and emphasizing false allegations against people who are not guilty. So Islam forbids leaders from committing zalim to the people based on Quran and Hadith, which in Surah Hud verse 18 and Surah Ashura verse 42. The word zalim in these verses interpreted as dark, which means the wrongdoers who do not follow the clear path of Allah will deserve the curse from Allah. In addition, there is a hadith narrated by Al-Bukhari that describes tyranny and darkness in the hereafter. Therefore, on the day of judgment, unjust and tyrannical leaders will be threatened with various threats.
My name is IZZATI binti HUSSAIN, metric number 1191788. Next, the role of Aqidah and faith among national leaders. So, how faith affects the national leaders' behavior? Alright. Faith as a general source of leadership motivation generally, and faith more specifically as a source of ethical grounding resulting in moral behavior. The success of completing the task depends on the relationship of the leaders with man and Allah. Therefore, there are some characteristics of how faith can motivate national leaders to follow Rasulullah leading the Ummah. Next, trustworthy. A good national leader is someone who has a strong and qualified faith and the pillars of leadership. As an Islamic leader, faith is very important in shaping an Islamic leader who is able to lead the country according to the guidance set by Islam. One of the pillars in leadership and one of the Prophet Muhammad's essential characteristics is trustworthy. The Prophet Muhammad was very famous for his trustworthy attitude. In fact, before becoming a messenger, he was given the title of Al-Amin. This quality makes the Prophet Muhammad is the ideal leader and deserves to be emulated and exemplified. Allah said in Surah Al-Anfal, meaning that, "O you who have believed, do not betray Allah and the messenger or betray your trust, you know the consequence." The verse means all trustworthy, and among the most important is to uphold the law of Allah in the Islamic State. Thus, it can be seen that the qualities of the Prophet Muhammad can be trusted to cover all aspects of life, not only political and leadership, but also economic, social life, and also religion. In carrying the trust of leadership, the Prophet Muhammad is very forbidding to all leaders to take everything that is not their right. According to Sham 2017, there is a phrase that power is trust, for it must be carried out with full trust. Syed Agil Hussein Al-Munawar said that this statement has two meanings. First, the man is a caliph and reigns in this world, so the power obtained as a delegation of authority from Allah, because Allah is the source of all power. Therefore, the authority held is only a temporary directive from Allah that will eventually need to be justified in front of Him. Second, power is simply trustworthy and mandate. Thus, its implementation also requires trust, and the trust in this case is an attitude full of accountability. honesty, and upholding principles. Trust in this sense as a principle or value. Overall, it may be said that the essence of leadership is trustworthy. The capacity to perform one's tasks in accordance with what Allah has prescribed in the Quran is what determines a leader's success in the world and hereafter. Allah said in Surah Al-Ahzab, meaning, indeed we offer the trust to the heavens and the earth and the mountains, and they declined to bear it and fear it. But man undertook to bear it. Indeed, he was unjust and ignorant. The verse describes metaphorically that trust is a heavy responsibility and burdensome obligation that must be carried by the leader of the nation. According to Hamka, the verse illustrates the severity of the responsibility which even the mountains, earth, and sky are unable to carry. In this interpretation, it is said that the only humans are capable of handling the responsibility, since Allah grants them that capacity despite their betrayal to trust. Therefore, national leaders and ministers must fulfill their leadership trustworthy as required by Islam. The faith of Muslim leaders will prevent them from rejecting Islam rules, prevent them from using the opportunity to profit themselves, and ignore the welfare of the people.
Assalamualaikum. My name is NURUL and NAZURA binti ZAILI, major number 1191827. The next point is receive advice. In Islam, it is stated that advice is an important matter and an obligation for all Muslims. Advice is also one of the essential religious foundation and the support of the truths. There is hadith from the Prophet Muhammad SAW that state about the advice. That is, an Abi Ruqayyah Tamim ad-Dari radhiyallahu anhu anna Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam qala ad-dinu an-nasiha qulna liman qala Allah wal kitabi wa li rasuli wa li ammatil muslimina wa ammatihim. The meaning of this hadith is from Abu Ruqayyah Tamim bin Aus that the Messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Religion is a nasiha." We ask for whom? His Majesty replied, "For Allah, His book, His Messenger, and for the Muslims Imam and all Muslims except the Imams." In matters related to the advising this leader, it can happen in various forms and dimensions, where through advice and reprimand from the top to the bottom, such as advice from Allah to the Prophet Muhammad SAW, advice from subordinates to high leaders, such as the companions advising the Prophet Muhammad SAW, or civilians who advise the caliphs. In fact, matters related to advising the leader happened during the time of the Caliphs al-Rashidin, when those who were appointed as ruler at that time always gave advice and get advice. For example, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq asserted in his first speech while holding the title of Islamic leader, "Oh man, indeed, I have been chosen to be your leader, but I'm not the best person among you. So if I'm right, then help me. If I'm wrong, then correct me." In the Islamic religion, the foundation of true and good relationship between the leader and the people is laid, which is that any individual who is appointed as a leader must adhere firmly to the creed taught by the Quran and the Sunnah. Without a firm creed, a leader will find it difficult to accept advice from insider in his leadership. So when the freedom to voice good advice and views is not accepted and practices, then a country will be hit by various negative elements in its government. Leader will also act arbitrarily even it is contradicts the teachings of Islam. Therefore, with a firm belief based on Allah and the Messenger, leaders will be created who will and open heart will easily accept advice from anyone if it brings good to the people, country, and the community. Not only that, but it will also create a close relationship between the leader and the people. Even justice will be upheld as best as possible, and the weakness that exists in humans can be overcome with the existence of this freedom of advice. In this matter of advice, it is not only the people that is required to advise the leader, but the leader must also always advise and reprimand the people if there is a mistake during the government. Because of that, in Islam, it is recommended to be brave in advising, reprimanding, or constructively criticizing a leader, because it is how the mistake made by the leader, without realizing it, can be corrected. This matter can be seen as a pure matter that arises from the heart that only want to seek the pleasure of God alone and truth, and not self-interest. That's all from me. I will pass to the next presenter.
My name is Nabilah binti SULAIMAN with number sheet 1191811. Now we look on the role of Aqidah among national leaders, which is uphold the Islamic law. Working for Islam means to reform oneself so that one's life teach others to believe, true belief and Islamic behavior to create a society that is committed to the Islamic way of thinking and Islamic way of life. And according to Fatihah Khan, since transforming every society into a functionally Islamic community and governing in accordance with the law of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is a must. Therefore, every effort to perform this goal according to the Sharia is also a must. And Ibn Khaldun asserted that a leader has a responsibility to spread Islam and uphold its message and teaching. And preaching activities need to be implemented in order to strengthen the spirit of religion in society and ensure that everyone uphold the truth. And the leader is also responsible to ensure that the people under his rule behave to the social norm as well as act in accordance with the teaching of religion. Hence, Allah has appointed a leader as the Khalid on the earth to manage the affair of the nation under his control. As Allah said in the Quran, Alladhina immakannahum fil ardi aqamus salah wa atawuz zakah wa amaru bil ma'ruf wa nahaw 'anil munkar walillahi aqibatul umur. Which means that those who, if we give them authority in the land, establish prayer and give zakah and enjoy what is right and forbid what is wrong, and to Allah belongs the outcome of all matters. And from Surah Al-Hajj verses 41. And Islam is a religion that is very concerned with the enforcement of Amar Ma'ruf Nahi Munkar because it is the basic pillar of the great moral, and the obligation to enforce these two duties is very important matter among Islamic leaders to keep God's law. And Rasulullah SAW has given clear guidance on how to uphold the duties of stopping evil deeds. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man ra'a minkum munkaran falyughayyirhu biyadihi, fa illam yastati' fa bilisanihi, fa illam yastati' fa biqalbihi, wa dhalika adhaful iman." Which means, whoever of you sees an evil, let him change it with his hand, and if he is not able to do so, with his tongue, and if he is not able to do so, then with his heart, and that is the weakest of faith. And the government need to use the power of government by implementing and enforcing the law, and this is one of the things contained in order to prevent evil by their hand. And the leader must eliminate all form of abuse that damage the image of society and Islam by using appropriate methods. Thus, when evil has been committed openly in a community without any sense of responsibility and effort from leaders to prevent it, then the evil become worse. And last but not least, every mu'min must give priority to matters of faith in all his life activities in this world, and including in aspect related to development of the ummah.
For the conclusion and suggestion, the characteristics of leadership in Islam are inspired by the core teachings of faith and humanity in Islam. A good leader is a faithful leader who has the qualities possessed by the Prophet Muhammad SAW, which is Siddiq, trust, tabligh and fatonah. One possible trigger that can grow qualities among the leader is by possession of the knowledge. A qualified leader through education may be capable of leading the followers. They can learn their situation and deal with many problems calmly, especially when they always see that all matters are under their responsibility that one day will be asked by the God in the hereafter. The qualities of faithful national leaders can nurture healthy government and result in the peoples becoming united and faithful. All the leaders' qualities in Islam dedicated to serve the ummah, and this is an ibadah to gain pleasure from Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. That's all from us. Thank you for attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.